I'm absolutely delighted to be here today with Nicolle Butcher, who the audience would have heard is the Chief Operating Officer of Ontario Power Generation. What some of you in the audience may not know is that Ontario Power Generation, or OPG, is our provincially owned electricity generation utility. I see on your bio, Nicolle, that your generating fleet that you're responsible for has a capacity over 15,600 megawatts, which I believe is over half of the power generation capacity in this province. My first question for you is, should you even be here right now? Who's keeping the lights on, and shouldn't you be some... That's not the...
Good team, Seán.
Okay, good.
Really good.
That's not the first question. So you've had a long career, 22 years with OPG. You've held a number of positions. You're the chair of the board of two of your subsidiaries, Eagle Creek Resources, which is your U.S. hydro subsidiary, and also Atura Power, which is your CCG units. I'm going to have to stop using acronyms, I think, but in addition to your long history with OPG, you've been honored by a number of your peers. You've been named one of Canada's top 100, most powerful women. You've been named Woman of the Year by both Wire and APRO. And again, for the benefit of those who don't know the acronyms, that's Women in Renewable Energy and our own Association of Power Producers of Ontario. So no one better suited, I think, to talk about this interesting topic. So why don't we level set to start with? Energy transition. We're talking about energy transition a lot. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to OPG?
Thanks, Seán, and I'm glad to be here talking about this today. It's interesting from an energy transition perspective, and the panel this morning got into this a bit, but we have a very clean grid. And so our transition journey in Ontario is different than many other jurisdictions. If you can think about it in two phases, one is, you need to take coal off the system. And then the second phase is really be prepared for the growth as other industries look to electrify to reduce their own carbon footprint. And we're really in that phase two, where we've taken all of our coal off the system. And now we're in the process of preparing for the extreme growth in demand that will come from electrification of industries, cars, homes, all of that, to really take the carbon out of the rest of the sector. And so, I look at it as we're partway there. We've done some really hard work in getting the coal plants off the system, and now we're ready to accelerate into that second phase and build for the demand growth.
Okay, so sounds important, but why nuclear? I mean, particularly when you look at some of the high-profile phasing out of nuclear, Germany is a case in point. Why nuclear? Why now?
It's a great question. And I would say it's not just nuclear. It's everything. We need everything. We need a full portfolio to really be able to address and get to net zero. We at OPG actually have what we call a net zero mixer, which is a model that looks 20 years out and says, what can you put in the system and still maintain affordability, reliability? We look at land use as it relates to solar and wind and a number of different factors. And when you run that model, there is no solution without nuclear. So the model just will not solve without nuclear. So it's quite clear to us that nuclear is a key piece of this. And I think that got reinforced by the IESO when they put out their Pathways to Decarbonization report and identified that we need 18 gigawatts of new nuclear capacity to hit net zero.
That's a lot of gigawatts.
That's a lot of
gigawatts.
Don't do the backwards math into megawatts, because it seems like a lot more in megawatts.
Exactly. Okay. So understand the need, understand the case for nuclear. I guess I don't want to be pessimistic, but Canada, we may have been good at designing and building nuclear at one point. I think the last nuclear facilities that we built, or OPG's predecessor built, are from the early 90s. like what have we done lately? What have our efforts been to scale nuclear and to meet this 18 gigawatt target that you've just mentioned?
And I get asked all the time, why OPG? Like, why are we leading the SMR charge really globally? And what gives us that confidence to take on that challenge? And I'll point back to a number of things really that we've developed through our refurbishment program. So we have a $12.8 billion refurbishment program underway. We are halfway through. We are on time and on budget. And through that, we have developed a number of things that really give us the confidence and underpin our SMR project. And the first is our project management capabilities. So I'll brag a bit here about our PMO team. They were just this week awarded for the Americas, the PMO Excellence Award from PMO Global, which assesses sort of large projects in all sorts of different industries. So they won the Americas, and now they go on to the Global Awards in December, and I have high hopes that they will win the Global Award for Project Management Organization. So I think that is a key to us. We feel like we know how to manage these projects. Other keys are, in nuclear, your vendor community and the ability to actually manufacture nuclear quality components is very difficult. And so between us and Bruce Power, we've put $25 billion into the Ontario nuclear supply chain. So we now know how to build nuclear quality parts. And that gives us confidence. So as we go into the SMR, we don't have to start from scratch and try to figure out, is there somebody who knows how to make the right valves with the right level of quality for a nuclear plant? We've got that. Our partnerships with our construction companies. So Atkins Realis, I thought I was going to slip up, but I caught myself there, formerly S&C, and AECON have been our partners through our refurbishment project. We have an IPD, an integrated project delivery model we're all incented to achieve success together. And that is critical. So when we hit a roadblock, we're all in the same boat. We're not battling one another. We're figuring out how to move that forward. And that really is what we've leveraged and structured our SMR program on, is that kind of partnership with our construction organizations. And then finally, I cannot emphasize the trades resources and what we have learned and the expertise that we have in our trades resources. So it is not easy to weld parts inside a nuclear plant. And so really getting expert welders who know how to do that and being able to carry them through each unit in our refurbishment and then carrying them right through our SMR program so that we know we're not going to have a lot of quality issues when we build the SMR, because we've overcome a number of them and we really have a highly trained workforce. So those four things really give us the confidence that we're the right ones to build the first SMR.
Well, congratulations on those accolades, and again, for the benefit of the audience, refurbishment. I mean, new build is hard. Refurbishment is extremely complex, extremely difficult. So
I refer to it as building a nuclear unit from the inside out.
Yes, well described. So we've got the refurbishment. We've got the refurbishment expertise. We've got the project management expertise. We've been strengthening the supply chain, and it sounds like we've got a new mousetrap in terms of how we deal with our partners. So all very impressive. Let's talk about SMRs then. SMRs is, they're getting a lot of attention to the point where in the bus shelters and the transit signs, I actually see SMRs being advertised. So tell me, SMRs, why? What's the value add? Why is OPG particularly interested in the small modular nuclear reactors? Yeah,
I think they're a critical piece of the energy transition. So they're 300 megawatts is the unit that we're looking at. I think for those of you who were at the panel, the first panel this morning, we had Lisa McBride on from GEH. She is, they are the vendor, and we are the owner of the asset. SMRs are unique because they're small enough that you can take them in bite-sized chunks. So, I used to say, we want to be able to build a nuclear reactor as if it was a gas plant. So a gas plant you can build in 5 years from permitting to in service. You have reasonable certainty on your costs. It's kind of cookie cutter. You know exactly what you're going to do with the technology. And so we need to get there from a nuclear perspective, and SMR is really that. And one of the announcements we just recently made was we're not just going to build one at Darlington, we're going to build 4. That was critical to us because the first one, it is a first of a kind unit. It has never been built before. It is based on a technology that exists, but there's many enhancements to that technology that are first of a kind. And so what we really need is to be able to build that one on time and on budget, take our lessons learned, and be able to roll that over into the second unit, the third unit. And it's really not until we get to the 4th unit that we know what's the baseline cost and schedule for actually being able to build one of these. And that's what we will take and then grow from there. So being able to, having full line of sight to actually being able to build 4 of them was very important to us.
You say grow from there, and certainly, again, there seems to be a lot of attention on SMRs or potential applications in the market. How they could be used in, for example, remote territories, and is just going back to where we started, just so critical. Or a critical part of nuclear's contribution to energy transition. So you're working away at Darlington. You're hoping to get the first commercialized unit built by when? Sorry,
we want to be done construction at the end of 28. So in service sometime in 29.
And then if OPG is a first mover on this thing, what does it look like next? Is this the Trojan horse to get SMRs out into the world? Does OPG have a world domination plan with respect to SMR development, or are you just content to dominate? And I probably shouldn't use that word for the best benefit of Competition Bureau types, but want to be a large player in SMR.
Is this where I do my Dr. Evil chuckle?
Exactly. If you had a cat, that would be excellent.
No, we're not looking for world domination. I think, one of the things that is critical to success for us is not having a unique reactor. Nobody wants to own a one-of-a-kind reactor. And so you will see us out. We are working with Tennessee Valley Authority in the U.S. We're working in Poland with our partners there. And really, that's not for world domination. It's not for us to, have to be out there operating those reactors. It's to ensure that we have a fleet of reactors that we can rely on. And so one of the critical things with nuclear is you need to have a fleet where if you have a problem, if you need parts, if you are trying to understand something, you've got an owners group big enough that gives you that confidence. And we have that with CANDO right now. So between OPG and Bruce Power and MB Power, I see Gaetan in the room, we have a CANDO owners group. It includes the international CANDOs, and we rely on that group really for a lot of research and for support. And so we need to build that fleet aspect. And so that's why you see us out internationally, really trying to understand where are other countries going, where are their interests, and how can we help?
So that's the international community with respect to nuclear, obviously so important. The kind of support and the sharing of ideas and knowledge that we've got in the nuclear industry is critically important for for the industry and obviously those of us that are consumers of the industry's product. Maybe let's shift back to large nuclear. So there may have been a number of people in the province that were surprised, or some were pleased, some maybe not so pleased about our government's announcement that they want to take steps to once again, hopefully facilitate new build nuclear in the province of Ontario. So what does OPG see as the business case for new build nuclear in Canada, and who out there can expect to see a new nuclear plant in their backyard?
So I would say you're not going to get 18 gigawatts of new nuclear with SMRs. And so it's been quite clear to us that it has to be a combination of SMRs as well as large nuclear. Bruce Power has announced that they're looking at going through the impact assessment process for large nuclear on their site. And we're doing site assessments. So we own a number of properties. Many of them are old coal plants where there's actually infrastructure in place, transmission, water intake, a number of the key aspects that you would need for nuclear. So we're looking at those sites and understanding what's the best use of them. Maybe it's large nuclear, maybe it's SMRs, maybe it's hydrogen, maybe it's batteries, maybe it's solar. We need to look at all of that and use our sites to the best way possible for the ratepayers of Ontario. And so we're in the process right now of looking at a number of sites to understand that. That also includes, we'll have to talk to the public, key stakeholders, the Indigenous community, to understand and garner their perspectives on what the best use of the site is.
Understood. So in terms of getting there, in terms of getting to this build out that we think is necessary, our federal government has announced investment tax credits to assist with our net zero goals and energy transition goals. I guess two questions for you. One, is what ought the role of government be in respect of these plans? And two, the ITCs seem fairly focused. They do, they are targeted towards SMRs and now large nuclear. Should government be involved in trying to pick winners or losers when it comes to technology?
It's interesting. The ITCs, I don't think they are picking winners and losers. I think the ITC really covers a gambit of different technologies. And I think the federal government was very cognizant of not trying to pick winners and losers. And overall, I think the ITCs are critical to actually getting us moving forward. To build 18 gigawatts is a lot of money. And so there's a need for federal support. And I would say federal support both financially, but the fact that they are coming out and saying nuclear has to be a piece of the puzzle is critical. Like it supports us in being able to talk to communities, talk to Indigenous, that, this is a way we have to go. And so having the federal government supporting us, we've always had provincial support, I would say, but the federal government really coming out in support of nuclear has been helpful from a number of different aspects. And the ITCs in particular are critical to actually getting things started and to not overwhelm. The biggest issue is if you overwhelm the ratepayer and you let the rates get to a state where people just can't afford electricity anymore, the whole transition stops. Like that, it will stop. Because who's going to buy an EV when their electricity bill is crazy? And so really managing that and balancing affordability, reliability, and on our transition to net zero is critical.
So you and I have known each other for a long time. Your bio said that you've been with OPG 22 years.
I think it's 24.
I was going to say, we
haven't updated the bio.
Rounding down slightly. So
way to out me with 2 extra years.
Um, I think the term nuclear renaissance. I feel like this is the third or fourth, maybe the fifth nuclear renaissance that we've lived through in our respective careers. And there's always seemed to have been something that stops that. So again, without trying to end on a down note, can we talk about the challenges, because the opportunities are clearly there, the need is clearly there. I can think of, off the top of my head, I start with, I suppose, social license, and as you mentioned, indigenous input, duty to consult. Can you speak to the challenges of getting social license and getting the support of Indigenous partners with respect to these projects?
Yeah, and it's absolutely critical. And at OPG, we're quite accustomed to working with Indigenous. We have actually not built a new greenfield generation facility of any kind since, I would guess, about 2012 without an Indigenous equity partner. So that piece we're accustomed to. I would say the step that we're taking beyond with the SMR is being careful to not come to the First Nation community with, here's our project, here's what we want to do, what do you think? But really bringing our Indigenous partners along with us as we think through it. So with our SMR, we brought them to site. We walked the site. We talked about the challenge, not the project, but the challenge of climate change and what options we had as partners to fix it. And that's how we started the dialogue, which is very different than I would say we did it even with the projects that we have built with First Nations in the past. So really taking that different perspective, everything we do will be done with an Indigenous partner. And so just recognizing that and getting early enough relationship building to have them feel like they're truly a partner and not just, an equity participant.
And obviously critically important to have Indigenous partners engaged and involved and supportive. What about everybody else? So Ontario, I think, we're very familiar with nuclear. 60-70% of our power is provided by nuclear. What about New Brunswick? Obviously, has operating nuclear plants. What about other provinces? Quebec. I mean, they're becoming interested in nuclear again. Alberta, Saskatchewan, signatories to the MOU on SMR development.
Yeah.
What do we have to do, if anything, to win over support in those jurisdictions?
I think it's about education. I think it's about making sure people understand the energy transition, what options we have in front of us, and how we can get there. And I know there's been some great work done both in Saskatchewan in particular to really bring that education along. And you can see the increased support from nuclear over the last couple of years in Saskatchewan as they've started to talk about it and understand it better. So it's really making sure we have enough time to do that, to go through that process. In Ontario, it's a little different. We actually have very good support for nuclear, in particular in the communities that actually host nuclear plants. So, when you look at Darlington, the Durham community, the Durham region is very supportive of nuclear. They understand we're good partners, we're a good neighbor, we support things in the community, and we have good paying jobs. And so I think it's really, we have a lot of people who come to visit Darlington right now to understand what is it like to have a community that's hosting a nuclear plant. And I think we have a good story there to be able to showcase.
Certainly, I think our host communities are proud of what they've accomplished and what nuclear has done for those communities. We've got 45 seconds left. Maybe let's just address one thing that always comes up: cost. How much is this going to cost? Is it affordable? How are we going to do this?
I would say we are still early days on figuring out cost. So the commitment we have made is that once we understand the cost, and we're very careful to not put a cost out before you've actually designed it. And so when we have a design and when we understand the cost, we will commit to that cost. And that's what we've proven with the $12.8 billion refurbishment project is we are on time and on budget, and that's how nuclear has to be done. And so whatever the cost ends up being, that will be an assessment around alternatives and whether this is the best alternative at that price, and then we'll execute it at that price.
Been a great audience. We've got to stop, but do you have a last word that you'd like to leave people with today?
Yes, because I don't want to end on cost. I would say, while this is a big challenge, this is also a massive opportunity. So this is our opportunity to have the economic development really brought to Ontario, Canada, both from good paying jobs in the nuclear industry, but also that clean energy allows us to leverage into new manufacturing in Ontario, as well as when we build the supply chain here, that's the supply chain that's going to be able to export their expertise, knowledge, and supply chain to globally as we grow. So really getting it set here is critical, and I think it's a great opportunity.
Nicolle, I know I speak for the audience in saying we wish you the greatest success in these endeavors because they are so important. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Seán.